Hello everyone. Just waiting for others to join so that we can start the session. Hi Rohi. Let's wait for 1 minute there, Rohi, and then we can give it a start.
Okay.
Hi Mugdha. I hope you all can hear me. So let's make a start. Shared my screen. So let's just quickly look into what we have done until yesterday, and then we can make a progress. So the interview related facts that we were talking about, that's related to the uh, basic requirement of doing the requirement analysis when it comes to data science. So we have looked into the fact that there must be some framework which we need to use to actuate this, and there must be some framework to follow this. Now we will be discussing CRISP-DM, but before we go in there, let's quickly validate, let's quickly look into the requirement analysis stage once more. And of course, as we have discussed yesterday, in each and every stage, in each and every part of the steps which you see over here, you clearly see that there is a validation stage which is at the end of each and every stage, which is as important as the rest of the stages. So overall, we start with the basic understanding of the problem. It's a very good tip to write down the problem as an artifact or as an article, as a documentation. And then during the life cycle of this implementation, we should ideally be striving to improve the documentation. So we start with understanding the problem, we write it down, we explore the context, and to do the exploration of the context, we do the set of interviews. So while we do interviews with people, this is what we discussed in the last session, that we talk to each and every stakeholder, each and every person who is involved into that specific team, into that specific area, into that line of business, so that we can better understand each and every point of view, so that it helps us understand the business context quite well. Now, this process of interview is going to be kind of a continuous process, because it is almost impossible that within the first 5 interviews with different people, we will be able to gather all the information, which is impossible. But once we have done at least that much that we can give it a start, then we go ahead and formulate the hypothesis. We carefully pick the frameworks. One of the frameworks that we are going to define now is CRISP-DM. We also define the framework in the sense that what tools we are going to use, what softwares will be used. and that will be entirely dependent on what kind of context we are working on, right? Because not every organization will be using all the relevant softwares. Some organizations will be using something while the others will be using something else. So we need to be very open when it comes to the entire pipeline of things, right? Starting with the requirement analysis as well as the data engineering part, the data analysis part, and then there will be a data science or a machine learning part if at all applicable to solve that problem. Then we will have a data visualization part, which is also our point number 5. And then we move over to the closure of the project, or we move over to the productionization of the project. So a set of frameworks and tools are really very important. The third stage will be to collect the data. To do this, the first thing that we do is that we list down all the data sets we need. We request for the data, or we take access for the data. If at all we are provided with the access of the data, that's fine. If not, we request people from the organization, from the team, whom usually people out of whom who we have interviewed, or the technical people, to give us access to the data. And then we proceed forward to analyze the data, which is step number 4. In step number 4, we thoroughly analyze the data end to end. We analyze the data as much as we can, and then we try to find out analyze the data as much as we can. Here in this stage, we have to pick the right analytical set of tools. We have to pick up the right analytical approach as well. In this case, and it will be clear when we are going to start doing the machine learning related activities from next week onwards, it will be really very clear to all of us why this analysis phase is really important. Because the more we analyze, the more questions we are going to solve. That's point number 1. And then point number 2 is as simple as, the more we analyze, the more we understand what kind of methodology we need to use to solve the problem. If at all, in our context, in our use case, in our question, machine learning will be applicable or not is itself a question. And that will be answered with respect to uh, how well we have understood the question and how well we have analyzed the data. The last but not the least, quite a vital point is to present the findings. We here have already discussed the psychological aspect. Let me just quickly brief it to you. If you are going in a meeting with that same person who has given you a question to solve, or with the same person who has given you the use case to solve, you can be 100%, even 200% sure that if your findings out of the analysis that you have done in stage 3 and 4 is not matching with the predefined intuition which that person had, right? Because every person who is asking a question has some idea about the answer, howsoever vague that answer or howsoever vague that idea might be. He or she always has an idea that this may well be the reason behind this problem. If you are going against that, if your finding is against that thinking, there will be a fight, and you have to be prepared for it. People will believe what they choose to believe. We are not here to change it. We are here to help them understand that the facts and findings which are coming out of the analysis is purely basis the data and the question which was asked. So if there is anything wrong, it's not, or it may well be with the process that we have followed. I'm not saying that we are going to do everything 100% correctly. There will always be scope of improvement, but then the driving factor behind what question or what output we have got is basically what question we have asked and what data we have used or how we have used, right? So to avoid this kind of a conflicting scenario, there is no definitive rule. One rule we apply in our organization is that we try to present the top findings. We only go in depth whenever we are asked to go in depth. We go into depth whenever it is required for the organization to go into depth. Else we don't go into depth, in the sense that we do not really uh, output, or we do not really document all the findings that we have got. We document it as part of our IPython notebook, maybe. We document it as part of our code, but we may not really necessarily put all the findings into the presentation. In the final presentation or the documentation, we put only that much part, which is solving the problem in the order of, let's say, the top 5 findings or the top 10 findings which we have. right? It's quite often a very good use case that if we are using BI tools to present the findings, let's say we are going to use ClickView or Tableau or Recipe Business Objects or anything else like, let's say, Power BI, we may want to follow or we may want to weave our findings in form of a story. And if we do that, it is quite clear, or it is historically seen as well, that people get more traction towards it. People get more interest in what you're trying to say. And by making the session as interactive as possible when you are explaining the outcome, it makes people realize, or it makes people or your audience have some increased level of confidence on you as well as on your findings, which is really very important. Of course, in each and every state, we have a validation stage. Until this point, I hope there is no doubt, but I'll just take a pause of a minute. If there is anyone who is having any doubt, please let me know. Okay. I will assume that there are no doubts. Then I will progress further. The first thing that we should look into is the CRISP DM model, right? So we'll start from that model and then we will look into other areas. Now, CRISP DM is actually a process. It is just like ITIL, or it is just like Agile, or it is just like the principles which is mentioned in or as part of PMP, or it is mentioned in, let's say, things which you learn if you are going to do certifications related to PMI ACP, Agile Certified Practitioner. Now, why is this CRISP DM thing so interesting or so important? So let's try to create some new lines at the end of the page and let's try to understand what is CRISP DM and why is it really important, right? So I'll write CRISP DM. Okay, I think I've missed the C, right? So CRISP DM, the last part of the last part, which is DM, you can call that DM is equal to data mining. Okay, this idea came from the European Union in the year 1996, and the reason why this idea came into picture is to have a defined process, let's say a defined process regarding or around data mining. So when we will go through the machine learning aspects and predictive analytics aspects, we will come to know what exactly is, let's say, data mining and what kind of help it does. But data mining is not, strictly speaking, predictive analytics. Predictive analytics is something else. Data mining is something else. Machine learning is the field of science which is simply used to solve these problems or to approach these problems. Nevertheless, CRISP DM, and the reason why we are discussing CRISP DM here is because it governs the entire process of what we have already learned or what we are going to do. So until this date, we have learned, let's say, some bits and pieces or some basics of, let's say, programming. Then we have learned statistics and probability to a very basic level, because as I said, unless and until we do things, we wouldn't understand what is really going on over here. So that's why we have not really went in depth of each and every topics. We have taken examples, we have taken certain set of examples, and we have looked into what is the conceptualization. We have not looked into the application, if you know what I mean. After which we have looked into SQL, and then we have looked into linear regression as well. So all of these things that we have done and the ones that we are going to do now need some kind of a process so that we can deliver, because the ultimate outcome, the final outcome, is that you need to deliver something. So when I mean I have to deliver something, what do I mean exactly? I mean some kind of a software which is going to run onto production, let's say, and it's going to give me predictions, right? Example given, any product which Google uses to better our searches or to better or to help us in doing essay translations. These are such kind of data science projects or projects which are using data science and they are into production, right? They are used as an application. They are used as a mobile app or some or sort. So example, there is an app of Google which is Google Lens. If you point Google Lens towards a text which you don't know, which you do not recognize, let's say you are in the Frankfurt airport, and you would like to read a sign which is written in, let's say, Germany. You would like to translate it. So you will have to open translate.google.com and type it. That's one option. You can ask a friend who's it's expert in the German language. That's another option. The third and very interesting option is you can open Google Lens. You can simply point your camera towards it, or you can simply point your smartphone's camera towards it. Google Lens will scan that text and it's going to exactly tell you what is going on over there, or what is the text, what is the meaning of the text. Now, this is although entirely powered in the backend by the Google Cloud Platform, which we will be briefly touching when we are going to, let's say, productionize our machine learning models. It is quite obvious, or it is really an industry thought process. It is really a practicable thought process that not all the companies are really creating products like Google Lens. Then are they really using data science is a very big question. The answer is yes, they are using data science. And you will not be able to understand how they are using it. Maybe they're simply analyzing. Maybe they're simply analyzing, and the outcome which they have is simply the analysis or the findings, right? So it is not always the fact that by delivery, I mean that a software has to run on a production system, and that software has to give us some actionable products, right? It may well be as simple as an IPython notebook, which is run every week on a Monday, and it gives me the prediction of what is going to happen in the current week, or how many, let's say, how much should I be spending on, let's say, marketing to get to the maximum amount of profit for this week, right? It may well be as simple as that, that there is a data analyst who is simply sitting on a desk and he or she is running the IPython notebook by clicking that run all cells option. And in the final cell, he or she gets the model, and maybe some kind of an input prompt where he or she can input the data, which which are obviously the features, and he or she gets the output, which is the target variable. So outcome is not always a software which has to run onto production. It can as simple or as simply be the analysis or the findings as well, right? But to arrive at an outcome, right, it is inevitable that we follow a process. If we are not going to follow a process, we will never reach an outcome. Without process, without a framework, without a dhacha, it is impossible for us to reach a pragmatic solution. Now, what do I mean by a pragmatic solution is something, if we can understand, then we will understand what is the importance of CRISP-DM, right? CRISP-DM is, I would say, the most popular framework or most popular process framework. This is not to say that it is not the only framework, okay? Please note this, there are many other frameworks as well. There are really many other frameworks as well. Okay, I don't know whether you have heard about this, but you can read on to the internet. There is another model known as AOSE, AOSEMN, AOSEMN framework, or OSEMN framework. So there are other frameworks as well. Okay, but we are specifically discussing CRISP-DM because in any polls that is being done in the industry, we have always seen that CRISP-DM is the most loved or most used in the industry as a practice. Okay. Now, before we really go into the outcome and the details of CRISP-DM and how that fits into the model, let's try and understand what this outcome really means. Outcome, as simple as in a very novice kind of a language, outcome means you are able to deliver something. You are able to deliver your output successfully, right? This word success is really important. If I want to really deliver something successfully, I need to define something which is known as a success matrix, right? This success matrix is otherwise known as a SMART framework, or doing things smartly. Okay, people will tell you to do things smartly, but I am here to tell you that that word SMART is actually an abbreviation, and you can expand that word into 5 very important words. The S of SMART stands for specific, right? M of SMART stands for measurable. The A for SMART stands for achievable. The R stands for relevant. And the T stands for time bound. So if you would like your data science projects to be successful, irrespective of whether they are personal projects or whether they are professional projects. Example, I'm thinking of starting a new personal project, which is to scrape the data from all these websites like 99acres.com and magicbricks.com and nobroker.com and so on and so forth. So that maybe if I collect enough data and I'm able to apply all the techniques which are really applicable there, can I really predict basis some input that if I would like to buy a house in XYZ area in any one city, I'm going to concentrate first of all in the city where I live. So if I'm going to input some features, is that model capable of giving me the outcome of whether or not I should buy the property at the first place, and secondly, how much will be the cost involved? So this is kind of a personal project that I've thought of. I have no idea or no fixed plans when I'm going to start, which is entirely wrong. I must have a plan and I must be defining this smart framework when I'm working, because I need to be very specific what I'm asking for. Maybe it will be good to have the cost of the flat, so or maybe it will be good to know if there will be hospitals around the vicinity. That maybe question should be removed. I have to be very specific. My question should be specific. My approach should be specific at each and every stage, just like we saw in the requirement analysis phase also. We were doing the validation of the data. In each and every stage, we did the validation of that stage. In the same way, each and every action we take should be measurable. We should be able to measure how much time have I spent, how much resourcing have I spent on so and so activity, and how much ROI have I got. These words might sound a bit managerial, but you will come to know that if you don't apply, or if the entire team is not aware of these smart framework related techniques, and then they are not applying methodology properly, 80% of the time we will land them in cases when our final outcome is either not ready, or it is ready at a time when we no longer need it, which means in both the cases we have no value for the outcome. We have done a lot of research, we have done a lot of data engineering, a lot of analysis, lot of, let's say, machine learning and visualization. Ultimately what we got is of no use for the organization. It is of no use for me. Then what is the advantage of, let's say, putting so much of effort? All our efforts have gone into vain. So as to ensure that our efforts are not going into vain, we are using this kind of a framework where the third word is achievable. This is a very interesting word. People think I can do anything with, let's say, machine learning. That is not the case. When on Monday we define what is actually machine learning, I will tell you the three most important properties which define whether or not you can actually do machine learning or no. Because as I've already mentioned in the last session as well, 80% of the use cases do not require machine learning. They will be resolved only by means of exploratory data analysis and statistical inference. If we have done these two things quite well, and really we have, juiced up the data, we have really extracted every information out of the data, then we will get so much of information, so much of insights, that it will solve a lot of problems for us. It may even solve questions which we did not ask. We may have asked question Q1, the analysis has not only answered Q1 but also Q2 and Q3, right? The fourth point here is the relevance. If I'm trying to solve a data science, if I'm trying to solve a problem by means of using data science, is that solution really relevant or not? At this point in time, the most common topic going around all of us throughout the world is the pandemic. We already know there is a pandemic ongoing. We know what is the effect. We know how many people's lives we have lost. At this point in time, let's say we five of us are going to create a project. We are going to create a project to understand the efficiency, or let's say we are going to predict the number of people who are going to get affected. Okay, on the next day, on the next week, on the next month, and so on. Okay, also assume that we are on the verge of releasing the vaccination. If we are already at the verge of releasing the vaccination, which is not really the case, this is just my assumption, okay, just to prove my point, or just to showcase the importance of, let's say, the fourth point. So if let's say the vaccines are almost already ready, or maybe some other country like Russia has already done it, and India is just about to import it, okay, by the end of this month it will be there in India. Is this really the right time? Is this really the right time to predict the number of people who are going to get infected? Because I don't think it's going to matter anymore. We already have the solution. If the vaccine is already proven to be effective, it may well be proving effective for us. We don't know whether it's going to prove effective until we have tested it. So I'm quite sure people in our country who are already making these drugs, they are already testing it on the volunteers. And unless and until they get good results, they're not going to push it for a mass usage, right? So if they have already reached that stage, is this really the right time to look back and look at the counts, the daily increase in counts, the daily decrease in counts? I don't think so. Maybe we would have done that 3 months earlier, 4 months earlier. This use case would have been quite important, but as of this date, this use case has no value, because if I wait for 2 more weeks, I'll get the vaccine, right? Last but not the least, we have to be time bound. This is being time bound is kind of a governance thing. It is a governance which takes care of all the above 4 points that I have mentioned. Being time bound is something like I have to define the project in certain way, maybe by usage of, let's say, other project management techniques like Agile, Scrum, and so on, where I put hard deadlines. If let's say I'm going to work in Scrum and I have sprints of 2 weeks, so after the end of every 2 week, I'm going to define, okay, in the first 2 weeks, these will be the stories which I'm going to deliver. The stories will be created in the backlog. They will be groomed. They will be discussed. The requirements will be understood. The entire team will be on a single view in a single place. In a single meeting, we are going to discuss this for one, even 2 hours. Then we take the stories for which we have the bandwidth, and we ought to complete all of those stories by the end of that sprint, which is by the end of the next 2 weeks. We complete so and so tasks. Maybe if I go back to my requirement analysis list, maybe I'm going to complete in the first 2 weeks this much part. In the next 2 weeks, I'm going to complete step number 2. In the next 2 weeks, I complete step number 3. Next 2 weeks, I complete step number 4, or maybe in here, I am going to take 2 sprints. And then in the last one sprint, right, I'm going to deliver the final output, which means I will take 6 sprints to deliver the entire thing, which means if each sprint is of 2 weeks, right, then I will take 12 weeks to deliver everything. I have to optimize this time boundness as well. I have to sit down and talk to my elite team, the team that we have already defined over here. This is the ideal team. This may or may not be there with you always, but this is the team we strive to have. This is the team we intend to have. Within this team, we are going to really sit down and decide, is that really a practical timeline? I mean, we are saying we are going to deliver things within 12 weeks to 13 weeks, right? There will be plus minus 5%, obviously, because there will always be scope of human errors. So plus minus 5%, 12 weeks is the timeline in which I want to deliver this entire output. After 12 weeks, is this problem really relevant for my company or no? Is the question which I need to ask. 12 weeks means I'm going to spend 3 months. I'm going to spend close to 2.5 to 3 months, okay, to deliver the entire end-to-end project. Is that really going to work for me or not? If that is not going to work for my organization, I optimize. Maybe I go back to the list of items I need to do, and then I say, no problem. Let's give understanding the problem part to Sarangs. Okay, let him do this activity in the first sprint. In the same time, in the background, at least we can create the frameworks or the documentations related to the hypothesis which we have, right? Or maybe we involve 2 people in step number 1. Okay, Sarangs and Rohi both will be involved in this, right? And Rohi can take up a small additional activity. Let Sarangs lead on point number 1. Rohi can take a small additional activity of looking into point number 2, creating the frameworks, creating the documentations, deciding the tools, and so on and so forth. So in this way, what we can do, maybe we will not be able to complete both of them, right? Maybe we will not be able to complete both of them in the first sprint itself, but at least we can complete 75% of these 2 points in the first sprint. So we have optimized our time. In this way, if we optimize the delivery timelines, we are really going to do it quickly. If we are going to do it well as do it within some time limits, then really that is going to deliver a lot of value to the organization. However, this is not to say that until and unless you reach the final stage of presentation that you did not add any value. I can assure you, if you have diligently followed the processes, if you have really worked hard, as an output of each and every stage is going to give you some gems. Okay, those gems are going to help you grow as an organization or as a team, right? So that's is the background. This is the skeleton which I wanted to tell you before really moving over to crisp dm, right? Now crisp dm is, now we can really define it. Crisp, the full form of crisp is CRISP, is cross industry, okay, standard process. And at the end we had dm. So dm stands for data mining, and that's what the process is. Cross industry standard process for data mining. The name itself gives you the idea why this is really useful. It is cross industry. It doesn't really matter in which company I am working or in which company Mugdha will be implementing this. It doesn't matter. It is cross industry. It doesn't depend on a domain. It is not dependent on any particular domain. That's the biggest advantage of CRISP-DM. What we do as part of CRISP-DM is as simple as point number one, we do the business understanding. Okay, point number two, we do the data understanding. Point number three, we do the data preparation. Point number four, we do the modeling. Point number five, we do the evaluation. And point number six, we do the deployment. These are the 6 steps of CRISP-DM. Now, what do I exactly mean by 6 steps? Let me take my pen and let me clearly tell you what I mean by these 6 steps. These 6 steps are otherwise known as the cycle of life. Okay, this is the cycle of life. I'm going to follow these 6 steps just like the arrows that I'm drawing, as well as like this, and like this, and like this. The idea here is, as you may have already guessed, I start with one point, I look into its output, move on to the second point. In the second point, if I'm not able to do this point, I can be 100% sure there is something wrong I have done in the first point. Maybe I have not done it properly. Then I have to go back. If 1 and 2 are done properly, I reach to point number 3. If I'm doing the data preparation and I somehow find that my preparation of the data is not enough to understand or to answer the question, then there is some definite problem in step number 1 as well as in step number 2. So let's go back. So at the end of stage 3, maybe we'll again go back to stage 1, again do stage 2, again do stage 3. In this way, this is the reason why it is called a cycle of life, because it is the life cycle for the entire project. At any point in time, we may want to go back to a certain stage and restart from there. Please be prepared. Nobody is perfect. Not even a single data science project can progress until the last stage without any blockers. I can assure you, in each and every stage, you will find blockers. You will find blockers which will frustrate you, to the end of the day. I'm doing a certain project right now, the details of which I really cannot share because it is part of my organization. For the last 2 weeks, I am only involved into data preparation. I have not done much of an analysis at all. Forget the modeling part. I am only doing the data preparation for the last 2 weeks. It is not yet done. I have 73 features to consider. I may have completed only up to 41 features I've done. Yes, as part and parcel of the process, I may have removed a couple of features because ultimately I came to know that those features are no longer useful. How did I come to know? Because when I was doing the preparation, it was not yielding much. It was not giving me much pointers towards the question I'm trying to solve. So I got back to the first point. I went back to the person who gave me the question. I sat down with the domain expert and I asked him that column number 7, 9, and 13 is not adding any value over here. Are they really required? Can you please re-explain why they are? Are there any questions? Okay. So the example which I was stating is a clear indication that at this stage I'm stuck. And I'm stuck at this stage, and then I am going back to the first stage. Then I am coming back again to the second stage. Now from today morning onwards, again I have started with the third stage. Right? From the last 2 weeks, I'm stuck only in these 3 points. I am not able to progress further. Forget the modeling. I have the questions with me, but from time to time, I'm going back to this point number 1 and point number 2. So this cycle of life is going to be an iterative process in both the directions. Please be prepared. If your team, your management, your leaders are not aware of these, you have to ensure that they are made aware about this. This will happen and this is bound to happen. There is no other way. Okay, let's clear all my drawings and let me close this window and let me just continue with the model. So we have defined CRISP DM, which is a cross industry standard process for data mining. We start with understanding, then we do the data understanding, then we do data preparation, then we do the modeling, then we do evaluation, and then we do the deployment. I would strongly recommend looking at a quick Wikipedia article on this once you are done. If you look at that article, you will come across a very, very important line which is written into Wikipedia, which I would just like to quote as is. I have opened Wikipedia in a different window on my phone actually, and I'm reading that line. That line says the sequence of the phases is not strict, and moving back and forth between phases as it is always required. Right? So it is kind of an agreed thing that you will be moving back and forth within the processes. Although this fixed structure is not something everybody will follow, you may also want to skip some stages if you want. Let's say you are going to do some use case where you yourself are the data engineer, or maybe you yourself designed the systems. So you have a very good understanding of the data. If you already have a very good understanding of the data, maybe you would like to take step 2 as optional, but I wouldn't do that. If I was doing the project, irrespective of how good or how bad my knowledge is or my homework is on the data, I will still do a lot of data understanding. The more I do, the more I will learn. The more I explore, the more I analyze, the more I will learn, is the point here, right? Until this point, are there any questions? Any questions?
No questions from my side.
Okay, Ravi. Okay, then the next thing that we will look into, let me just add a few lines first of all, just to make this thing look a little bit better. So I believe we have done this earlier. Yeah, we have done this in the earlier parts, right? So this is good. This is good. This is good. Let me just come down, Control End, and let me just. So this is the last topic in this area. I wanted to quickly cover a concept known as design thinking. I was very lucky that in the organization where I'm working, I was able to be part of a workshop which was a 2-day workshop only on the design thinking. And that workshop was really, really very good. Oh, I'm sorry, that was a single day workshop. I'm sorry. It was a full day, single day workshop on the design thinking. And we tried our level best to solve a lot of problems. We created problems of ourselves and then, or for ourselves, and we tried to resolve them. And then we understood what is the reason why design thinking is taking so much of a hype, so much of a grip in any industry wherever you go. Now, design thinking in itself is a completely different domain altogether. We are not going to, or we are not here to become experts into design thinking. We are just here to know what are the stages of design thinking. Okay, very simply, there are 3 stages: understand, explore, and materialize. As part of understanding what we do, we empathize. The first thing we do is that we empathize. We empathize with our users and we empathize with ourselves. We must not have any sympathy for anybody. We must empathize. Why we need to empathize is because we have to conduct a lot of research to develop an understanding of our users and the problems they are facing. The next stage is known as design, or it is also known as, let's say, define. In this definition stage, I combine all my findings, all my research, all my interview, all my documents that I've done, and try to observe where the user's problem exists. At the end, when we are done with these 3 broad stages of design thinking, right, I will tell you why exactly we are learning design thinking. That's something that I've not told you. It is not a process. It is actually a domain. Why we are taking ideas from this domain is something I'll tell you at the end. But as part of understand, we empathize first, then we define. And then we move on to the next part, which is exploration, where we first of all have to ideate. So we create an idea, right? We create or we generate a range of crazy but creative ideas. We ideate to solve some problem, some one problem or a set of problem. Ideally, it is said that you should restrict yourself to only one problem at a certain point in time. Then what do we do? Part of the exploration stage itself, we do a prototype. We try to build something out of our idea. You had that idea, we prototyped it. Okay, it is not a fully working solution. It has huge number of issues. It has code problems. It has, let's say, performance issue. It is running on a server where it should not be running. It is using a wrong programming language. You shouldn't care. Okay, you shouldn't care at all. You should try to adjust. You should try to ignore the errors that you may have made and try to create a prototype, something which is working to some extent. Right? This is like building a real life or a tactile representations for your ideas. Final stage is to materialize. This is where you actually get back to your users to whom you have empathized with and their questions, and you give this prototype to them and you tell them, friends, what do you think about this? Is this really good for you, or did I completely misunderstood the problem? So now they are going to give you feedback. This is why, or this is where you need to be very, very clear and very specific to them that howsoever friendly they might be with you, howsoever educated they might be with you, doesn't matter. They should be very critical. They should be blatantly honest or brutally honest if they are talking to you. They should be brutally honest. If they are hiding something, if they are not honest with you, this stage will fail. And if this stage fails, everything else fails. Right? You have to test them. So this stage is known as testing. Since you're taking a feedback, and then once you are done, you may go back, repeat some of the stages, or you implement. So this is the overall idea. Now there are 2 concepts in design thinking. One is the structure. This is known as the structure, right? And one is a property. It's a very, very important property which is part of design thinking. The moment I tell you the property, you will come to know where we are going to use this. The use of this design thinking in the data science is to answer questions which no one asked you, and also to answer question which no one thought about. This is the stage where you really become proactive and you don't wait for me as a client or a product owner or a product manager to come down to you and then I'm going to tell you this is the problem I'm facing, please try and help me. You will try to do analysis of yourself. You will be running sub teams, sub projects, work streams, whatever you want to call, by following the organizational processes, obviously, by being time bound, by being smart thing that we have already defined. You will be extra cautious but extra proactive in trying to find problems which nobody has asked you to solve, right? But you think that's a brilliantly capable idea. It is a very, very creative idea that you can try to resolve and you can find something very good and you can add value to your organization. People will be against you maybe in the first stages. Over a period of time, they will be in line. Provided your idea really has that traction, then they will fall in line, right? Now, the most practical application is the structure of the design thinking principles, which you can use in data science. The most important property that you can use or which you can borrow from this design thinking domain is otherwise known as 5 whys. This is somewhat related to the human psychology. We will quickly look into this, and then maybe you can practice this with your friends and with your family. This is an exercise where you have to ask why for 5 times. How do you do that? You have gone to some interview and you are asking questions to a person who is a product owner. The business question, the overall business question you are trying to resolve is, I have a certain product XYZ. I have a pen. Okay, I have a pen in my hand, so I'm just taking an example of that pen. So the pen in my hand is made by which? This is made of ITC. Its name is Classmate. Okay, its name is Octane. Octane is maybe a brand. Octane Gel. Okay, so Octane Gel is a pen by Classmate. Classmate is a company owned by ITC, it seems, and Octane pens are not selling very well. I just want to improve their sell. I just want to improve their sale. I just want to improve the profit. This is the overall question which you have. And part of that question, you are interviewing multiple different people, right? To get the understanding of the problem, the data, the constraints, the environment, and so on. At any point in time, let's say you ask somebody a question. I'm the product owner. Let's say Mugdha is asking me some questions which she wants to know from me. At certain point in time, my answer is very, very vague. Okay, it's like going 1,000 miles on the top of my head. Either I'm not able to digest the answer. I mean, either she is not able to digest my answer, or she is not able to relate it to the context. She is not able to understand why this answer is given by this experienced and educated person, and I'm not able to relate that answer to my main problem. What do you do in that kind of a situation to ensure you are getting a correct answer? Or, in other words, what do you do to ensure you get a valuable answer? Is that you ask why for 5 times. I tell you a statement, you ask me why. Okay, that is why number 1. Then I again give you some answer, you ask me why. Then I again give you some answer, you ask me why. By the end of 5 whys, it is a proven fact. By the end of 5 whys, you will come to know a lot more than that initial vague answer. Why? Because you have peeled the onion. You have peeled each and every layer of the onion and you have reached the center. Only by asking 5 whys. You will see that at max by asking 5 times whys, you are able to extract a lot of information, a lot of intuition, a lot of point of view from a certain person or a certain team. If you are following 5 whys, it will be extremely beneficial for you. I, for myself, do it every time I face a situation where I am not able to understand what is going on. I face a situation a lot of times. I face this kind of a situation where I believe I may understand the business or the domain or the requirement or the people and so on, and then I start asking questions to people. Either they get annoyed or irritated, or maybe my style of asking the question was wrong. I don't know. Maybe I have asked a wrong question. But the final outcome is, the problem here is the answer which they give me is really very vague. I cannot proceed with that answer. I need some concrete answer to proceed. Right? I need a very good answer to proceed. If I don't reach good answer, how am I going to make my work smart? Right? How am I going to employ CRISP-DM? How am I going to do the validation in each and every stage? How am I going to complete 1 or 1.5 tasks per sprint if I have not understood the things? So what I do, I ask 5 whys. Now this is not only limited to the interview stage. Okay, let's be very honest. This is applicable everywhere. Everywhere. If you are facing a problem, even during the life cycle of the implementation, try to implement this 5 why principle. See how it goes. If you have any friend who is facing a problem and that friend is really worried about that problem, try this 5 why technique with that friend. See how it goes. Most often than not, it will give you the answer which you are looking for, or the actual answer. Right? This is really important. This is something that we must follow, and design thinking is something which is really going to help you, which is really going to help you, okay, to follow a very good mindset, follow a very good approach. Right? A very good approach will be followed, so that you can deliver things on time, and that too inclusive of the quality. Right? I believe that's all in the section that we need to know. I hope I have explained things to you in a very simple language. If in case you have any queries, any doubts, please do let me know. I will also share a few materials, maybe if I find the URLs from the internet, and I will be sharing them with you. But you can read about these. I mean, these are really generic terms. You can go on the internet, search for these things. You will get the idea. Yes, Rohi, I think you were asking something.
No, no.
Okay. I think that should be all from me as of now. Then let's go ahead. We will close the session as of now. I have not uploaded the recorded videos for at least last 2 to 3 classes, if I am not wrong. So I will be doing this, right? I will be doing this as soon as I can, and then I will be writing on our group. Thank you, friends. Have a good weekend.
Okay, thank you, Sudha. Same to you.
Thanks, Mom.
Bye.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Thank you.